What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Debate This, brought to you by Phillips Law Group. In today's episode, we have Dani Sureck, Cardinals reporter. Give it up for her. Woo, woo, woo. I'm not too excited because I'm debating against her today. And, usually I'd go easy. I went easy on Paul Cavisi week one. The first time that I did this, I came out with the dub. But then I kind of let loose with Darren, and I can't go on a 2-game losing streak. So, hey, Dani, sorry if, I'm a little rough today.
No need to apologize. I'm really not concerned, Felipe. I'm going to bring the fire.
I'm just setting up my apologies in advance. So, Jacob, our moderator, what do you got for us today?
All right, now let's jump into our first topic. Dani, you get to kick this one off. Do you prefer K1 spreading the ball, or would you like to see Hopkins get more targets as the season progresses?
I am totally fine spreading the wealth on this offense. It's a win-win for this team, and that's no disrespect to DeAndre Hopkins. It's more of a respect to him because these opponents, of course, they're going to target and they're going to double team him with their best cornerbacks. Because look, if you throw a ball to D-Hop, it's not even really a 50-50 ball. It's going to Hopkins. So that leaves Christian Kirk, AJ Green, Rondale Moore open. I think that Kyler Murray has done a great job finding those wide receivers, taking advantage of those receivers that he has open. And look, if you've got Hopkins, of course, throw it his way. I'm totally fine spreading the wealth, though, and not just focusing on DeAndre Hopkins because that's what's worked for this offense.
All right, Dani, that's a good start. Again, I'm applauding in advance, but there's a lot of tough games left on the schedule. You still got Dallas, you got the Seahawks twice, you got the Packers. You have so many tough matchups left on the schedule. So there's gonna be a time where you're just gonna have to depend on DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, that offense is at its peak when DeAndre Hopkins is involved, heavily involved, I should say. And if you didn't already see it, against the 49ers, that offense was a little not necessarily in sync. And what happened? You just got to depend on DeAndre Hopkins. When in doubt, you go to DeAndre Hopkins. And in that fourth quarter against the Niners, you saw that 30-yard grab that set him up for that 6-yard touchdown. And that's going to end up being, in my opinion, or what should be the script moving forward. Because especially as you're in playoff contention, you're trying to get better seeding and all that. There's going to be times where you just got to, hey, Hop, here you go, bro. Handle my business, take me to the promised land. And you've already seen it a couple times this season.
Of course, I'm not saying you don't throw to Hopkins, but you mentioned it. They have tough teams, tough defenses still coming up. So why wouldn't Kyler Murray continue to build this rapport with all of his other receivers if they're going to be facing great defenses who are going to be able to give DeAndre Hopkins somewhat of a challenge? You want Kyler Murray to already have that chemistry with those other receivers and understand how to play off each other. So why not get used to that now?
Dani, let's say it's week 17. You're trying to get that number one seed into the playoffs, and you're 2 minutes. It's a 2-minute drill. You're trying to score. Who are you gonna throw to? You gonna throw to DeAndre Hopkins or AJ Green? Can you look at me with a straight face and say you're gonna throw to AJ Green when you need to win the game?
This is somehow not the argument. I'm not saying DeAndre Hopkins is not a number one receiver. I'm just saying I don't think you need to intentionally only target him or put all of the targets towards him. That's all. I'm not saying he's not great or I wouldn't want to go to him in one of those situations, but I do like Kyler Murray spreading the offense.
I appreciate you not answering my question, but Jacob, what you got?
Whatever.
Now let's move on to our next topic. Felipe, you get the first shot at this one. Have the Cardinals proved that they are Super Bowl contenders through 6 weeks?
Look, Cardinals fans, I know this team's off to a 6-0 start, but they're one of the top teams in the NFL right now, but I wouldn't necessarily categorize them as Super Bowl contenders yet. They need another signature win, in my opinion. They got one already going on the road, beating the Rams after the Rams beat the Buccaneers the week before. That was a good start. Now they just got to finish it. Hopefully against the Packers on Thursday Night Football. Crossing my fingers that the Cardinals are 7-0 and maybe the Packers are 6-1 and whatnot. That's going to really tell me a lot about where this team is in terms of that Super Bowl ladder. So not yet, but they're up there. They're getting close. They just need another signature win.
Man, I personally think it's too early for this question, especially now that there are 17 games in the season. We're only through 6. But I disagree with you. I think if we're going to talk about it at this point, this Cardinals team is a Super Bowl contender. Yes, they're undefeated, but that's not the end game. That's not necessarily what they care about. Remember, the Steelers went 12-0 to start the season last year and lost in the wild card round. So going undefeated isn't necessarily what's been so impressive, but it's just the cohesiveness behind this team. The Cardinals haven't just won 6 easy games against teams that have struggled. They've won against good teams. They've been able to rely on this offense. They've had 5 games where they've put up 30 or more points. But to back that up, the defense has had 5 games where they've allowed 20 or fewer points. They finally figured out how to really stop the run against the number 1 rushing team in the league against the Browns last week. Cardinals only allowed for 73 yards on the ground. I think this team is really picking up steam. I think they're showing that the offense and defense are working well together. They've got a +8 turnover differential, but the key there is that the offense scores on the following drives. This team is really working well together, and I think those 6 wins have been big 6 wins. So if you're going to talk about if a team is a Super Bowl contender, I don't see how you can say the Cardinals are not because of how well they've played and the teams that they beat.
Now, let's get into our last topic. Dani, you get the first go at this one. Was Week 6 Kyler Murray's best win as the Cardinals quarterback?
Yes, I think absolutely. Kyler had a great game. Look, there were some miscues with the snaps. There were some fumbles that Kyler ended up recovering. But I think what was so important was the command and the leadership that we saw from Kyler. They were without their head coach, offensive coordinator, play caller, Cliff Kingsbury because of COVID, as well as their quarterbacks coach, Cam Turner. So it was assistant wide receivers coach, Spencer Whipple, who was in Kyler's ear, and they didn't have a lot of time to get ready for that. And I think Kyler handled that well. I think he was calling audibles and just really commanding the defense based on what he was seeing, and just going with the flow of the game. And I think that comes also with the maturation we've seen from him as he's in his 3rd year in the league now. He was making some smart plays. He had a couple plays where he had some yards in front of him to run, but he chose to wait for the play to carry on and then pass the ball to one of his receivers who got open. I think it was just a really great example of the type of leader that Kyler Murray has become in this 3rd year in the league for him.
I think it's funny how in the first question we're talking about DeAndre Hopkins, and obviously against the Browns they're missing a bunch of key people on that roster. You know, you talk about Cliff Kingsbury, the play caller and all that stuff, but you know, this was another one of those adversity games. And who did Kyler Murray depend on? DeAndre Hopkins, right? It's just ironic how, you know, everything.
You're going to take away the credit from Kyler Murray.
When he needed someone the most, he obviously went to DeAndre Hopkins, 2 receiving touchdowns. That just says a lot. But I think his best game was against the Rams. I mean, heading into that game, he hadn't beat the Rams in his career, and he went on the road, a stadium that the Cardinals haven't necessarily won at. Leading up to Week 4, he dominated. I mean, a bunch of those 3rd down conversions. 3rd and 16, he rushed for 17 yards, getting that first down. But what impressed me more was that he outplayed another MVP candidate. I mean, say what you want to say about Baker Mayfield, you don't necessarily put him up there with the Matthew Staffords, with the Aaron Rodgers, with the Tom Bradys of the world. And you see how Matthew Stafford has been playing throughout this year, aside from that Week 4 loss to the Arizona Cardinals. But that's the reason why I put the Cardinals at the top as one of the top teams in the NFL, because, you know, they didn't necessarily beat the Niners or the Jaguars. I mean, you expect that from the Cardinals, but to go on the road and beat another top team in the NFL, I think that says a lot more than, I mean, yeah, you didn't have Cliff Kingsbury, you didn't have Cam Turner, you didn't have Rodney Hudson, but at the end of the day, you did have DeAndre Hopkins, you had AJ Green, you had Christian Kirk, you had that one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. You still had a lot of key pieces on offense, and it's Kyler Murray, you know, so I think the Rams win was a little bit more impressive.
I agree that maybe that Rams game was a better game for Kyler physically and looking at the stats, but I think this was a bigger game.
Did you say you agree? Oh,
No.
Thank you.
You didn't let me finish. No, And if you want to look at the stat sheet, but I think this win over the Browns was a more important and a bigger win for Kyler because we got to see so many of those intangible qualities, those qualities that you want to see in a franchise quarterback that Kyler Murray put on display. We've known he's got the arm and he's got the legs and he's got the accuracy. We didn't need that Rams game to know that, but watching the way he controlled this offense against the Browns throughout all this adversity, that was something that makes this more of an impressive win for me besides that Rams game for Kyler Murray.
But see, all that, controlling the line of scrimmage, the pre-snap and all that, I had seen that from Kyler Murray throughout the first 5 weeks of the season. Anything that I saw from Kyler Murray in week 6 didn't necessarily surprise me. If anything, I knew he was going to depend on DeAndre Hopkins, and you saw that. So, hey.
Agree to disagree, Felipe.
Well, that ends this debate, and it's time for me to pick a winner. Both of you clearly brought the heat, with Dani taking round 1 and Felipe taking round 3, making round 2 the deciding factor. And maybe it's my bias towards the media with our lack of media coverage. To quote JJ Watt, maybe we're just better, and maybe we're Super Bowl contenders. Dani, you get your first dub on the first try.
What? You know what? Put me in the Cardinals jersey because I am undefeated. I'm 1-0. I'm going to take it. Felipe, you put up a good fight.
We all get dubs on our first time on the show, so that's my welcome to the squad dub. So I appreciate y'all, and thanks for everyone for tuning in to another episode of Debate This, brought to you by Phillips Law Group. Catch you guys later.